There's a guy at every company. He's the one who shows up early, hits every deadline, fixes the system when it breaks at 11 p.m. on a Friday. He trains the new hires. He handles the difficult clients nobody else wants. He never complains. He never makes a scene. And he hasn't been promoted in 4 years. You probably know him. Maybe you are him. Here's what nobody tells you about that guy. He didn't end up there because he was lazy. He didn't end up there because he was overlooked by accident. He ended up there because he was too good. And the better he got, the more locked in he became. There's a specific mechanism behind this. It's not about luck. It's not about office politics in the way most people think. It's something quieter than that. Something that happens gradually, one reasonable request at a time, until one day you look up and realize you've spent years becoming exceptional at something that was never going to take you anywhere. That's what this is about. When you first start a job, you're trying to prove yourself. That makes sense. You work hard, you deliver, you show people they made the right call hiring you. And at some point it works. You become the person they trust. The person who doesn't need to be managed. The person who just gets things done. And that's where the trap begins. Not with a bad decision, not with a mistake, with a series of completely reasonable things that slowly add up to something nobody planned. It starts small. You fix something that was broken. You do it well, so next time something breaks, they call you again. Then you train a new hire because you know the system better than anyone. Then you inherit the difficult client, the one nobody else wants, because you're the one who doesn't complain. And now you're the expert on difficult clients, which means more difficult clients. At no point did anyone sit in a room and decide to trap you. It just happened, one request at a time, until your job quietly became 2 jobs and none of it came with a new title. Here's the part that feels confusing from the inside. You're doing exactly what they asked. You're delivering results. You're making everyone's life easier. And somehow, that's the problem. Because when you make yourself that useful in a specific role, you become expensive to move. Not expensive in salary, expensive in risk. If your manager promotes you, they have to replace you. And replacing someone who quietly holds everything together is genuinely painful. It creates gaps. It creates uncertainty. It reflects badly on them if the replacement doesn't work out. So keeping you where you are becomes the safer choice. Not because they don't value you, because they value you exactly where you are. This is why you keep getting more responsibility without more title, more problems without more pay. They give you harder work because you can handle it. They tell you you're doing a great job, and they mean it. But meaning it and moving you are 2 completely different things. Now here's where it gets deeper. When you're really good at your job, you stop learning. Not because you're lazy, because you've optimized. You know the systems. You know the shortcuts. You know how to get things done without thinking too hard. And that efficiency feels like mastery. But it isn't mastery. It's repetition. The skills that make you excellent at your current role, execution, reliability, showing up and delivering, those are not the skills required one level up. The level above you requires something different. Strategy, delegation, managing situations where there's no clear answer. Here's what that looks like in practice. There's a position that opens up. You've been there longer than anyone. You know the product, the clients, the history. By every logical measure, you're the obvious choice. But they give it to someone who's been there 18 months. Someone who spoke up in meetings. Someone who asked questions that made leadership think. Someone who, on paper, has done less than you. And you sit with that. You try to make sense of it. And the honest answer, the one nobody says out loud, is that they could picture him in that role. They couldn't picture you in it. Not because you weren't capable, because they'd never seen you try to be anything other than what you already were. That's the skills gap, not a gap in ability, a gap in visibility of potential. And here's the uncomfortable part. Companies don't train you for the level above you. They expect you to already be demonstrating it before they promote you. but you can't demonstrate it when you're buried in the job you already have. So you keep getting marked as exceeds expectations. You keep getting praised for reliability. But nobody's evaluating you for the next role. And when a position opens up, they don't think of you. Not because your work is bad, but because your story inside the organization is fixed. You're the person who handles this, not the person who's ready for that. And that story gets harder to change the longer you stay. Because organizations decide who you are quickly. Not in writing, not formally. In the way people talk about you in rooms you're not in. You become the Excel guy, the one who handles escalations, the one who owns the monthly report. And once that label exists, every year you stay in the role adds more evidence for it. Tenure stops looking like experience. It starts looking like confirmation. This is the part that feels unfair. You didn't ask for the label. You just did your job well. But being the go-to person for something specific is only recognition for so long. At some point, go-to becomes can't do anything else. And the people making decisions about your career, the ones 2 levels above you, the ones in succession planning meetings you've never been invited to, they're working from that story. Not from your task completion rate, not from your performance review scores. Promotion decisions don't happen in performance reviews. They happen in hallway conversations, in skip-level meetings, in rooms where someone asks, "Who's ready for this?" And a name either comes to mind or it doesn't. And if you've been quietly excellent in the background, your name doesn't come to mind. Silence gets read as satisfaction. If you're not talking about what you want, the assumption is that you're happy where you are. And if leadership thinks you're happy, there's no urgency to move you. You're not a risk. You're not going anywhere. So there's no reason to think about you differently. Think about the last performance review you sat in. Your manager told you what you did well. Maybe they mentioned one area to work on. And then it ended. Nobody asked where you wanted to be in 2 years. Nobody talked about what the next role would look like. Because that conversation only happens when someone makes it happen. And if you didn't make it happen, it didn't happen. The people who do move up are often not the best at the job. They're the most visible. They talked about their work. They built relationships outside their immediate team. They made their ambitions known, not loudly, not with drama, just clearly enough that the people above them knew there was a clock, that this person was growing, with or without a new title. And that made them a priority, because now there was a risk of losing them. That's not cynical. That's just how organizations respond to what's in front of them. And if you're not in front of them, you're not in the conversation. Here's what this all comes down to. Competence was never the strategy. It was the entry fee. It gets you in the room. It gets you stability. It gets you respect. But it doesn't get you movement. And most people never realize that. They just keep getting better at what they already do, and they wonder why nothing changes. The trap isn't that you failed. The trap is that you succeeded at the wrong level for too long. You optimized for being good at the job you have instead of being ready for the job you want. And by the time most people see it clearly, years have already passed. Not because they weren't good enough, because they were.